Stellar is going to be, by the end of the year, like the best place to experiment on in terms of like cutting edge cryptography. And we see privacy being a major hurdle in that adoption. We're tackling this. We think we have like great ideas, and we're working with like great partners in the ecosystem to make it happen. But anyone who tells you they have privacy completely figured out are like full shit.
Today's episode is brought to you by Trustless Media, pioneering the first way to bid, win, and trade ad space as NFTs in your favorite creators. You can bid now to unlock ads just like this in Coinage or other premium creators like The Rollup or Thinking Crypto at a 90% discount. Head to auction.trustless.media to bid on ads today and even get paid if you get outbid. All right, we're here with the Chief Product Officer at Stellar, Tomer Weller. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Thank you for having me. Very excited. It took a while to get this, but here we are.
It's better late than never, and honestly, there's so much stuff going on in Stellar right now that I feel like it's a good time to chat, and you guys just wrapped up your conference down in Rio as well. So there's a lot to get into, but I guess maybe just to start, for those who don't know, for whatever reason, what Stellar is all about. You guys have been around for a very long time, actually before Ethereum launched. Just so the quick primer, we'll get that out of the way. What should people know about Stellar?
Sure. So Stellar is an L1 blockchain, been around since 2014, like you said, before even Ethereum launched. Really focused on financial inclusion and started with a focus on cross-border payments. And with the years, we've kind of expanded into a whole suite of everyday financial services. And last year we launched smart contracts on Stellar, so there's a booming DeFi ecosystem. And we're really seeing a lot of communities around the world use blockchain in a way that is actually, meaningful. We were really focused on real world utility.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the thing that's hot right now is actually weirdly, ironically, where I first discovered Stellar, which was all about cross-border payments. And I was reflecting on that too, because it's like, okay, y'all were ahead of the camp on that one. So maybe talk to me a little bit about the evolution of that and how it's guiding things now, not just at Stellar, but I guess crypto in general.
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the earliest use cases of Bitcoin was actually cross-border payments. So basically what people realize is that if there's sufficient buy market in one part of the world, a sufficient sell market in another part of the world, you could just, you could buy Bitcoin, send it to someone else, have them cash out in their local exchange, and boom, you have a cross-border payment, right? Now, very cool, but also there's a lot of deficiencies there, right? Bitcoin is very volatile. The confirmation times are very slow, and so and how do you create kind of stability and predictability in this? And so Stellar came out of this idea of how can we turn these cross-border payments on a blockchain into something that is actually doable, including the whole kind of compliance layer, which is very complex. And so Stellar was built as a really kind of batteries included network for cross-border payments. And so it had as primitives, as technical primitives, things like assets. So reserve-backed assets. Today we call these stablecoins. Back then the term hasn't been coined yet, right? And so it had a decentralized exchange baked into the protocol, enshrined. Things that people are very excited today with networks like Hyperliquid. Actually, Stellar had that back in 2014. And so, and the consensus protocol really focused on being fast, really focused on kind of on agreement rather than proof of work or proof of stake. I'm happy to get into that. And yeah. So that happened. Yeah,
we'll get into some of that, the consensus and cross functionality, because I think, well, backing up, because you've been at Stellar for 8 years now, right? I think is
right, since 2017. Yeah.
So you've seen the evolution of the space and things at Stellar and various different cycles, and I feel like just from big picture level, when it comes to cross-border payments, we're at an interesting time. You and I were just talking about Argentina before this. There's a lot of nations out there that have people adopting crypto just by sheer circumstance and necessity in terms of escaping what is in Turkey and in Argentina tough situations in terms of their local currencies. But I feel like I was just down there using Western Union actually was pretty good. And I remember Stellar years ago was working with Western Union. And now I feel like what would have been seen as it's crypto or die. We're at this moment in time now where old systems are now coming on chain. These solutions are helping old legacy companies be more efficient. How do you look at the evolution of all of this through Stellar's eyes?
Sure. So look, Stellar has always been, the idea was for Stellar to be a bridge between different financial services, right? And it was never about being kind of like an island of like, crypto anarchists. And so one of the things that we focused on throughout the years, and actually in my first few years in Stellar is really what I focused on, is this idea of what we call the anchor network, which is this interoperable network of on and off ramps. A bunch around the world, and like you said, MoneyGram, actually now Western Union, is MoneyGram is one of these, and you can actually go into with Stellar USDC in your Stellar wallet to one of more than 400,000 agents around the world, and turn that USDC into cash local currency, and that is huge. Like if you go, you mentioned Buenos Aires or Argentina, and I think that's like a really interesting location, because sometimes when we're here in the States, it's hard to understand how currency inflation affects people. And so if you ask people here what's the exchange rate of dollars to like other coins, people are probably not gonna have that mental model. You talk to people in Argentina, they have like a very accurate daily model of like what their money is worth, and they're constantly dealing with hedging, and they're constantly dealing with maintaining value. And so if they get a paycheck in pesos, they will almost immediately transfer it or convert it to some other form of value that does not depreciate as quickly as pesos, right? And so when we did a little get together in Buenos Aires a couple of years ago, and getting local currency as someone coming from the States was actually not trivial. And if you go to the bank, sometimes you will get the bank rate, which is not actually the street rate, which is very different. If you want to get a street rate, sometimes it feels very dodgy. You're like walking around in like downtown Buenos Aires, and people are like shouting "cambio, cambio" everywhere, and they will like pull you into like a little like dark street corner into exchanging your dollars for pesos. It's a very dodgy like experience. But actually, through MoneyGram, you could get like a favorable rate, and you could do this in a very kind of like safe way. Just like go into a MoneyGram agent and go through the entire process there, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's definitely become one of the pieces that you wouldn't see. Obviously, we talk about stablecoins a lot here in the States, but you wouldn't see it necessarily. Like I studied abroad in Argentina and got thrown out of my host mom's apartment because she was like, they were supposed to pay me in dollars or pay me in pesos. And to me, I was like, what's the difference? It's a conversion thing. But it's like, no, it's like that is not going to be worth much unless I get dollars. And it's like that experience that I guess guides where it shouldn't be too surprising that stablecoins have blown up now. But in terms of how Stellar wants to tackle it, you mentioned the MoneyGram partnership and like kind of the on and off ramp pieces. It's been interesting to kind of think about now as Stripe also enters this space, as so many other people are now targeting stablecoins. What is kind of the piece that you look at that has maybe changed or stayed constant around the way that Stellar has wanted to tackle that, as so many other people now have like seen, okay, there might be something here?
Yeah, I think the exciting thing for us is that we've always envisioned this space as having like many different assets, many different stable coins, both in terms of like different dollar stable coins, but also like different currency denominated stable coins. But it was kind of like disappointing throughout the years to see that we were basically stuck with like, two flavors of dollars and that's it. And I think that right now we're seeing a lot more interest. And so it's like the Stellar vision is actually starting to play out. We're very excited to see, like we're seeing on Stellar, Mexican peso stablecoin, a bunch of other, LATAM is like really big, like we said. And so we're actually starting to see Forex going on chain, and we're also starting to see various yield-bearing assets, whether it's like yield-bearing stable coins or bonds. There are some very exciting projects around that in Stellar in the space. And so I think that this evolution and moving away from like a one-size-fits-all into a like purposely fit asset for use case, I think that's like very exciting.
Let's talk about the next chapter of Stellar as well, because you guys, as I said, just had your conference down in Rio, and we were chatting a little bit before about kind of the evolution. all the way back to even before you were there, the idea of integrating smart contracts a couple of years ago. And now looking ahead, I guess if you could like kind of explain a little bit of how things have changed and what you're most excited about now coming out of that conference, what is kind of the thing that people should be paying attention to when it comes to this next evolution of Stellar?
Yeah, so I think, like you said, we just came from Meridian, which is our annual conference. It was in Rio, and we were all very much surprised to how well it was accepted. We had a lot of local folks showed up. We did a 2-day hackathon with 500 registrations before the event, 1,200 registrations for the event itself. A lot of announcements came out of Meridian from partners. We saw Red Swan, which is a tokenized real estate asset. We saw Centrifuge, who I think you also know. We saw Ondo. We saw the PayPal USD finally launch on Stellar and available right now. We saw a bunch of other assets, and so that's very exciting. I think from our perspective, like you said, smart contracts launched last year on Stellar. I think this was a very meaningful step in the evolution of Stellar, of kind of like moving from being laser focused on cross-border payments to opening up that infrastructure for more kind of like innovation or trust minimized innovation from the ecosystem. And so we have kind of like a booming DeFi ecosystem right now. And what we're seeing is this really cool relationship between, you see these like Stellar wallets that have been around for a while, with a lot of a great user base that is very loyal, and you're seeing they get access to various DeFi protocols right now. So one of the biggest protocols on Stellar is Blend, which is a lending borrowing protocol, and we're seeing this cool, what do we call, cash to DeFi use cases, in which someone will maybe get a remittance in a dollar stablecoin, and then instead of just like taking it out as cash, they will keep it in the app, put it into like a lending borrowing protocol, and actually make it work for them, which is effectively giving people access to a level of financial services that they haven't had before. And like things that we in the States take for granted, like a high yield savings account, is actually not an easy thing to accomplish in other places. So we're seeing that play out in the DeFi space, which is really cool. I think you asked what I'm really excited about. I think privacy is a really big thing. We're past the Genius Act now. There's a lot of enterprises that are looking to either issue stablecoins or use stablecoins. A lot of traditional financial services companies are coming on board, and what they're looking for is to replicate some of what they have in traditional finance, while reaping the benefits of DeFi, of stablecoins. And we see privacy being a major hurdle in that adoption. We're seeing companies that are interested in doing merchant payments. We're seeing companies that want to do payroll. We're seeing companies that want to do B2B payments. You can't have, like fully transparent, fully public transactions for these use cases. And so I think this is going to be a major catalyst for us working on privacy. And the flip side is that we have a more friendly administration here in the States. And so, people, if you'd ask a company like a year ago in the States about doing anything related to privacy, people would be like shit scared about it.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's true. I mean, we were just covering the Roman Storm Tornado Cash trial not too far from here in New York. And it's very much a reminder of the idea of, look, this is a right for a lot of people to transact privately, but somehow when it's on the blockchain, people get skittish around it. And obviously, if the rules aren't written, as we've seen before, regulators, the law can be applied in certain ways. And so answering that question, I think, is going to be big. And perhaps why we've seen, Stellar included, so many other projects now trying to tackle this issue. But I guess I want to get into a little bit of that in a second. But for you personally, I guess maybe just backing up, I should have asked you this first, because as I said, it was kind of my experience down in Argentina that kind of unlocked the idea of why crypto matters to me. But for you, Tomer, you personally, why are you building in this space? What was the thing that got you in here, got you so excited about what crypto unlocks?
Yeah, so I was a huge crypto skeptic before Stellar. I think in 2017, I was wrapping up some of my grad school work at the Media Lab at MIT, and I was down in San Francisco interviewing with some some big companies, and a friend of mine who was from MIT, who's also a Bitcoin Core contributor, Jeremy Rubin, he was doing some work for Jed and Stellar at the time, and he said I should talk with Jed. I told Jeremy that I think Bitcoin's a scam and it's never going to work and it's over. He told me I'm an idiot and not doing crypto right now is like not doing web in the 90s. I think it was his exact statement. So I met up with Jed in the San Francisco office at the time. Met up with Jed, met up with David Mazieris, who's the chief scientist, and I was really, I was immediately like stellar pilled. Like I think that seeing how crypto can actually make a difference, and obviously our space is filled with a lot of nefarious projects, but I do think that there's a core and an essence of kind of like really democratizing access to finance. I was sold on that, and I'm still here 8 years later because I think that it's a super interesting industry to be in, and I think like seeing that evolution and being part of it is phenomenal. And I think Stellar is unique in the sense that we've always, SDF has a mission of creating equitable access to the world's financial system. We've always been kind of like laser focused, eyes on the ball, and I think that if you look at what happened in crypto in the past 8 years, there's been a lot of distractions, a lot of like hype cycles, and so being mission driven, being able to identify kind of like what makes sense has been very valuable, and I think it had kept Stellar relevant. Whereas if you look at a lot of our competitors from like from those years, a lot of them are just like not around anymore, right?
True. I mean, I think that's one of the things, and I guess we can get into this now when it comes to interoperability, composability, how you kind of think strategically about that, because there are certainly, it has been interesting from where I sit as, the founder of Coinage is a Web3 outlet that's built on chain that lets people mint NFTs to co-own this with us. That too, from a regulatory perspective, was a little bit more dangerous 3 years ago than it is now. But in building that, it had been interesting to explore the way that some chains look at, no, we're going to do our own thing over here, such as a Solana of the world, or the Avalanches and the other ones who are like, no, we're going to go build over here, but also want to be EVM compatible because we think this is where everything's going to be built in Ethereum, but also needs to be more efficient. Then we saw so many L2s launch. Then we saw some of those L2s become Bitcoin layer 2s, and the idea of DeFi being built on Bitcoin. Strategically, how do you think about the right way to tackle that, and I guess the right way to identify, like you guys had, certain pieces that are getting overlooked or done poorly to where Stellar can, because you guys, I mean, it's been crazy. I don't know, we've been sleeping on things over there at Stellar because I'm like, this project's even bigger than some of the other ones we've covered.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I think we take a very kind of like first principles approach to things. So when we started working on smart contracts, I think this was 21 and 22, we took a good hard look at the space of what's out there right now, and obviously going for like an EVM based system was the kind of like default easiest choice. But we looked at where kind of like our engineering principles and how robust the Stellar network is, and kind of like the levels of scale that we want to get to, and for a whole plethora of reasons, we thought the EVM was not great, especially in light of there's the tragedy of the EVM is that we're like this whole EVM space is informed by decisions made hastily in like 2014, right? And so there's so many things about the design of the EVM that we know is shit, right? Like things like reentrancy attacks, which are still a thing like now, kind of like 10 years after the introduction of EVM. And you have ecosystems that are opting in for this tech, even though they know that it has all these like challenges, especially in terms of security, but also in terms of scalability. And so we had this like late mover advantage in which we could talk to different teams in the ecosystem, and we actually talked with a lot of people from the EVM ecosystem. We talked with Paradigm, with Jorgis, who does an amazing job there on Paradigm's kind of like R&D front, and they have some of like the best tooling for EVM. We talked with people in the Cosmos ecosystems. We talked with people in the Solana and the Near ecosystem, and we eventually decided to go for WebAssembly, WASM, and Rust as the main programming language. I think when we made that choice, it was still kind of like in high contention, like, is this the right decision? But I think the way things have played out in the past few years is that, we are in a world in which EVM is not the end all for smart contracts. More than that, we even got to a point where earlier this year, Vitalik himself, put an article saying, actually, maybe we should migrate to RISC-V. So, like the world is changing, and I think that being too focused on, we need to be focused on where we want to be, not where the ecosystem is at right now. And so I'm really happy we made that decision. We're seeing a lot of people in the Rust ecosystem get really excited. And when I meet these people, like right now in Meridian, one of the things that are really interesting to me, that a lot of people, once they get introduced to Stellar, they just want to work on Stellar. I was talking with one of the engineers in Open Zeppelin who are building some stuff for Stellar, and he told me that now his side projects are also about Stellar because he's so excited. We have a lot of Rust firepower in the Stellar ecosystem and in the foundation, and yeah, it's just a really exciting space to be in.
Yeah, when it comes to, I guess, the strategy around some of that too, it's been interesting to see the evolution now in where we are. So much of this is focused on, institutions. I think you'd probably agree, more so than maybe it was even just a couple of years ago, around we need to get retail and NFTs and the idea really focusing on retail. And then, like you said, things flipped, things changed, and now it seems like there's a mad dash to onboard financial institutions right now because that's a lot of money that comes on chain. But I wonder if there's somewhat, in terms of, you said, the mission statement of helping democratize, these tools for everybody. If there is a weird trade-off that you're seeing in crypto right now, which is so many people chasing dollars over people, I guess, how do you kind of square that? What's your take on the implementation of everything now?
Well, I think devil's in the details here, and I think that it really is. A lot of it is what metrics are we measuring? I think there is definitely an overemphasis on just TVL and bringing kind of big balances on chain, and a lot of it is just smoke and mirrors. If you just take a balance of several $1 million that's making this yield on T-bills in the bank, you transfer it to stablecoins, it's just indirectly the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And so the question is are we actually transforming industries, and are we actually transforming people's lives? Are we making, are we actually giving access to services that people haven't had before? And as we work with various institutions, these are questions that we're asking ourselves, and it's not just about bringing big dollar balances. It's about actually translating these into financial services that are more equitable and available to people that didn't have them before.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's one of the things that's been interesting to watch, because like you said, slapping some more money on chain, it might increase that vanity metric, but it doesn't really change all that much, which again, as someone in your position who's been doing this for so long, you see where some shortcuts can be made, or some things can be overstretched in terms of look at all we've done.
Yep.
For you, is there one metric you point to? Because there's so much to dig into in terms of Stellar developers, usage from actual people around the world. Is there a metric that stands out to you as look, I'm most proud about this and what we've been able to do on Stellar?
I'm really excited about, and there's actually a report that's about to come out from Range. That's a company that does compliance and analytics on a bunch of chains, and I got a preview into probably by the time this podcast comes out, it'll be out, on some analysis on the Stellar network, and there is a very strong correlation between the narrative that we talk about on Stellar and the actual usage and value and the flow of value. So what we're seeing is there's a lot of small transactions on Stellar which correlate to to real usage, actual at kind of work hours. So these are not trading bots that are just kind of moving value around. Mm-hmm. And so I do think that the things that we care about are actual active users. We care about velocity of assets more than their TVL. So if there's a big balance of just sitting there and doing nothing, and the asset is dormant, it's probably not doing much for the world, right? And so velocity, I think, is a much better metric, and we're actually in the process right now at SDF and building out our 2026 strategy and metrics, and velocity is going to be a really big one that we're working towards.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think, and you mentioned it too, in terms of the administration coming in now, kind of changing, I think it certainly accelerated the way that a lot of projects are thinking about these things. There's DATs now, which weren't even a thing like a year ago. There's so many different pieces that feel like a switch just flipped, and now we're in a new ecosystem. When it comes to that, what's Tomer's take on like the biggest thing that's changed in terms of the strategy now, given that all of a sudden it seems like it's fair to experiment with a lot of these things here in the US? Is there anything that stands out to you in terms of, I guess, a different strategy, a different piece of the playbook that wouldn't have existed if we didn't all of a sudden have all of this change in DC?
Yeah, I'll definitely. And by the way, just a side note, I think we saw that one of the greatest tweets that ever came from the official SEC account a few days ago, which was,
there have been a lot. I don't know which one was it for you?
This one was specifically the SEC account quoting Paul Atkins, chairman of the SEC, saying, "PSA SEC does not stand for." It does not stand for Securities and Everything Commission. And I think that was kind of like a jab at like the previous administration and their kind of like overreach. And specifically, this was around the 0.0 asset, and they got a no action letter that's saying that like the programmatic transfer of value of these utility assets does not constitute as like a security transaction. I thought that was like really big, and I like the humor as well.
No, Hester Peirce, I think she also put one out too. It was like right after they had just done, I forgot which bulletin it was, but like it was SOB 121 that I think a lot of people wanted to be changed.
Yeah.
And then she put it out. It was like the exact next one was like, hey, we're undoing what was so bad before. Yeah. And it's just like, it's a step beyond. I think there had, from what we've seen and going down and chatting with the crypto task force, there was such angst built around like, hey, we're a regulator that's messing this up under the last administration, to then now go a step further and undo all of that. You could be quiet about it, or you could be like, no, we're actually moving the Overton window a little bit.
Yeah, but to your question, I said privacy. I'm going to say privacy again and again. I think that what we're seeing is like this new environment that we're in allows us to rethink things from like the ground up and from first principles, rather than think about how do we work around the administration, how do we work like around previous constraints. There's the chilling effect is still real. Like I talk to researchers and engineers that are building things, and they're literally afraid to publish them or to put the code online, even if it's just research or like prototyping, because of Roman Storm and because of Tornado Cash. So it's shifting. There's still a lot of angst around this space, and we need to really work both as an industry and with the administration on kind of like making sure that as long as we're actually thinking about what privacy at scale looks like and ensuring that, people's concerns are mitigated, that we're allowed to innovate.
Yeah. I mean, I think even us being in the arena as a co-op here in the US that lets people have a stake in what we do, we've experienced this too, because there is still kind of questions around laws that need to be changed, because like we don't want to store any of this data either. It's like a security risk for any company to store identifiable information. And if you can get around storing that but also be compliant, I think that's why so many people are right now super excited about zero knowledge proofs, the idea of proving identity. Like all of this is starting to come into focus.
Yeah, I would say the challenge is not the existence of rules that tell you what not to do. The challenge is the non-existence of rules to tell you what you can do. Right?
Yeah.
And I think like we're starting to see changes there, but people talk about you were saying compliance. If I talk about compliance in the context of what we're building in privacy, then our legal team is going to give me a call and say, you can't talk about compliance because we don't know what compliance is, and they'll be right. And that's just, by the way, we only operate in the U.S. really in terms of like where we're based, but like you've got to deal with this in every single jurisdiction too, which seems trickier. Yeah, although SDF is based in the U.S. and so we do deal a lot with the U.S. situation, which is oftentimes kind of like the most complex one. And I would say that we're really rethinking kind of like from the ground up, what does privacy look like? Can we build a type of administrative controls that we think for first principles could allow for compliance, and then hopefully get to a point where in collaboration with the legislator and with the administration, we can get to a point in which this maps to actual compliance rules.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's exciting to be, again, kind of building in the space and seeing everything flip. I would also note the no action letter is exciting just because that's what we were down in DC for, was to discuss, hey, look, there's never been an issue around like what we think we can do, but it'd be very nice to just have someone say, look, this is kosher. But to wrap up, Tomer, I guess, looking ahead, in terms of everything we've already discussed, clearly it's an exciting time. Obviously, as we hit on, there's a lot of enthusiasm in the Stellar ecosystem. I guess if there are things to point to that would be your bold predictions, this is how we always like wrapping up interviews, is Tomer's bold predictions, and they don't necessarily need to be Stellar specific.
Yeah.
But just in terms of what you see happening that people might be sleeping on when it comes to, I guess, privacy you brought up, DeFi, usage around the world, what are you kind of identifying as those big, bold predictions that you would say, look, this is going to happen, but people don't know yet?
Yeah, I think non-US dollar stablecoins are happening. I think there's been this pendulum swing from having two stablecoins to having to now everyone's talking about issuing a stablecoin. That's probably not going to be the case. Not everyone needs a stablecoin, and I think we're going to see a lot of conversion in the space where people who think they might need to issue a stablecoin are just going to collaborate with an existing stablecoin issuer. I think that, the big question is how do stablecoin yields actually get distributed? And we're seeing a lot of shifts in that space from going 100% to the asset issuer to some assets going 100% to the users to these conglomerates who are sharing profits. And then there's the question of what happens when interest rates go down and this money is less abundant, what is actually going to move stablecoins? So there's a lot of really interesting questions that are completely unanswered, and I think that I wouldn't predict that the biggest players in the space are going to remain the biggest player. Tether aside, I feel like Tether is such a big giant that it's impossible to move them. Yeah,
yeah. $13 billion in a year in profit with only a few hundred employees is tough to unseat that.
Yeah. I think there's going to be some consolidation. There's going to be some movement in that space. Not everyone needs a stable coin. I think that a lot of people are, I'm talking about privacy here. A lot of other people are also talking about privacy. I've been spending the past few months talking to every leader in the space. And my sentiment right now is that a lot of people talk about privacy as if they have it figured out, but we don't. It's really, it's a pickle. I think the tech is there. I think zero knowledge cryptography is an amazing space. FHE, fully homomorphic encryption is getting there. So the technical building blocks are there, and we're putting them into the Stellar protocol, and Stellar is going to be, by the end of the year, the best place to experiment on in terms of cutting edge cryptography. With that said, how to map these things into adoption at scale, which works, for enterprises, works for the administration, both in the States and other places. That's challenging. We're tackling this. We think we have great ideas, and we're working with great partners in the ecosystem to make it happen. But anyone who tells you they have privacy completely figured out are full of shit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's so many different threads to weave. It's difficult to get them all right just out of the box so early on. And I know, I don't know, someone always pushes back on how early on are we, but I still think we're very early on.
I definitely agree.
So I think there's still a lot, and obviously only covered a little bit of it. But Tomer, thank you so much for coming on, man. We've been trying to do this for a while, but glad we got it done. And as you have those updates, you got to come back on, man.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Appreciate it.